They say the night tells the truth about a town. In Lake Haven, truth came with blue and red lights, a barked command, get down, get the down, and then those shots that slice air so thin you can't breathe through it. I ran before I knew I was moving, socks half off, keys still in my hand. And there he was, my boy, Noah, 17. Headphones still around his neck like a joke God didn't find funny. Three officers standing over him with their pistols still warm, faces and scrubbed clean of anything human. "Stop!" I yelled, voice cracking. "He's just a kid." The chief was the one who answered. Victor Ames' square jaw metal rack that steady politician's stare. "Report says he pulled a weapon," he muttered, already turning away. But the only thing in Noah's hand was a cracked phone flickering the chorus of a song I'll never be able to listen to again. I dropped to my knees and gathered him up anyway, like fathers do, as if you can hold life in place with your arms. The officers walked off. No tape, no bagging evidence, no nothing. Just sirens drifting, the smell of exhaust, and me kneeling in the glow of a streetlight, praying to wake up and never ever waking up. Let me back up. Before that night, we were regular. I worked day shift at the laminate plant on Route 7, took overtime when it was there. My wife Sabrina made sweet tea that could end a war. Lila, she's 9, has this habit of grabbing your pinky and asking for a promise you can't break. And Noah was long and lean and loud about everything, hoops, architecture, how he was going to build something that lasts, Dad, something taller than hate. He'd say, grinning like the world couldn't touch him. We had backyard barbecue, Sundays, hand-me-down lawn chairs, neighbors arguing about the Raiders like they get a vote. I thought that was safety. Turns out it was just silence between storms. There were signs, if I'm honest, patrol cars easing by our place, a little too slow, officers mistaking Noah for someone else, and checking his backpack for contraband that turned out to be algebra. I told him to keep his head down. They don't know you, son, and I hate that sentence every day. Miss Delilah from church pulled me aside after service once and said, "Watch that, Chief. Man doesn't play fair." I smiled, said thanks, and walked my family to the car like I had control of anything. After the shooting, I did the right things. Internal Affairs complaint forms, calls to the city council, handshakes that smelled like lemon sanitizer, and regret. Body cams malfunctioned. A report went missing. The medical examiner stamped justified, and I could feel a door slam shut that you can't pry open with 2 hands and a crowbar. I took it to God in a way I never had. I stood up in the middle of our church and asked where justice lived, because it sure wasn't on Oak Street at 11:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. Folks bowed their heads, some in prayer, some so they didn't have to look at me. The pastor said, "And in God's time," and I said, "My son is in the ground now." And that's when I learned grief is a house with no good rooms. After 3 weeks of pretending the process would work, I started building my own. Down in the basement, where the dryer squeaks and the concrete smells like old rain, I put up a corkboard, then another. News clippings, obits, missing person flyers. Yellowed articles about incidents that looked too familiar. Names I'd never known whose mothers cry in the same pitch Sabrina does. A pattern formed like blood through a paper towel. Same line of officers, same phrases in reports: resisted weapon recovered, feared for safety, and Chief Ames standing tall at every podium, promising transparency. Sabrina came down one night and stood in the doorway a long time. "Caleb," she said, "yeah, I didn't tell you my name yet. I'm Caleb Morgan, factory guy, father of 2. This is swallowing you whole." She wasn't wrong. Sleep had turned into reruns of that night. Food tasted like cardboard. Lila started waking up asking if the police take little girls. I told her no, and I don't know if that was a promise or a prayer. I found one of the names that kept circling back: Officer Matt Russo. Not the oldest guy, not the meanest face, just the swagger of someone who thinks the badge came with a crown. Russo's name sat on too many pages, too many boys whose shoes were still by their doors. I started learning his rhythms the way I used to learn the sound of Noah's jumper hitting net. What bar he liked, what nights he stayed late, who he bragged to. One humid Friday, he staggered out of the Bluebird tap after midnight, arm around another cop, talking too loud for his own safety. I sat in my truck under a busted street lamp and hit record on my phone. Kid had it coming. Russo slurred, said, "Freeze, bam." You should have seen his face. The words bounced across the hood like hailstones. I could have walked over and put my fist through his teeth. I didn't. I held the phone steady. Sometimes justice is a shaky hand that refuses to shake. I knew better than to hand it to the department. It vanished by sunrise, so I called a reporter who hadn't sold her spine yet, a woman named Tess Parker from the Ledger. We met at a diner off the highway, the kind of place where the coffee is burned and the pico is perfect. I slid the phone across the table. She listened. When the clip ended, she whispered, "They'll come for me." "They already came for me," I said. "Print it." 2 days later. Lake Haven had a throat. People in the streets, Noah's face on cardboard, Russo suspended, not fired, not charged, just sent home with pay and a PR sentence. But even a crack is hope. The machine felt it. And machines don't like leaks. They slashed my tires. Someone spray-painted "liar" across our porch in red so bright and it bled through 2 coats of paint. 2 officers knocked and said they'd heard I'd been harassing poor Officer Russo. "Careful now, Mr. Morgan, false accusations have consequences." My boss called me into the office and looked past me like I was air. "Negative attention," he said. "Orders from upstairs." They boxed my things. I walked out holding a plant I didn't even like. Weird cars started showing up on our street, a gray sedan idling too long, a pickup easing past 3 times in an hour. One night I got pulled over and, what do you know, there's a bag of white powder in my trunk I'd never seen. It disappeared from evidence before shift change. Message received. The next morning our bedroom dresser was turned upside down. Lila's drawings torn, nothing taken. Just the kind of mess people leave when they want to rearrange your brain. Sabrina packed a bag for her and Lila the week after and went to her sister's for a little while, which is a phrase with no calendar attached. "I want you alive," she said. "I want our daughter to sleep through the night." I told her if I quit, Noah's memory gets the same lie Chief Ames gave the microphone. We stood there in the kitchen, 2 corners of a house that felt suddenly too big, and neither of us moved toward the other. I kept digging. I drew lines between Chief Ames and a councilman who loved ribbon cuttings and police endorsements, between Ames and a judge who never met a lack of evidence he didn't like. I recorded a Sergeant Albright saying he'd seen worse buried deeper than pretending he didn't say it. I stacked proof like firewood and kept thinking about the match. The match, if I'm honest, was a gun. I bought one same model the department uses, and I stared at it like it was a mirror. I imagined walking into Ames's office and making the world finally balance. But here's the thing about a bullet, it doesn't build anything. Noah wanted to build. I kept hearing him say it. Build something that lasts, Dad. Hard to square that with a trigger. One stormy Tuesday, the Lord loves a cliche, but it was raining like God was mad at the gutters. I walked into the precinct after hours. Ames was alone, lamp throwing a gold circle, cigar smoke drawing halos he didn't deserve. He looked up, slow, smiled like a man who already wrote the ending. "Took you long enough," he said. "You killed my son," I told him. "Your boy made a choice," he said, leaning back. "Wrong place, wrong time. Happens." He watched my hand. "You planning to make my point for me, Mr. Morgan, judge, jury, executioner? That's my job, right? You pull that trigger. Your evidence won't matter. You'll be a headline then, a cautionary tale." My hands shook. I got close enough to see the pores on his nose. I thought about Noah's laugh, about Lila's pinky promises, about Sabrina counting seconds when she couldn't sleep. I lowered the gun. Ames smirked like he'd won something permanent. "Knew you didn't have it," he said. I reached into my jacket and clicked a little black rectangle to life. His voice filled his own office, quiet threats he'd made on calls, orders to lose reports, the kind of confession men give when they think the room is friendly. "You're finished," I said. I'd already sent the files to Tess and 3 national outlets and to a dozen families who'd been told their kids slipped and fell into a bullet. Out in the rain, you could hear the crowd, not cops' cameras. The Department of Justice showed up the week after. The state AG opened a case. The councilman deleted tweets about law and order and went on vacation. Ames called me a liar on TV. He said my tapes were doctored. He said the town would crumble without his order. But for once, the story outran the spin. Families came forward. Officers flipped. The judge recused himself from so many cases he might as well have recused himself from Earth. Months later, I stood outside the courthouse and watched Victor Ames walk in cuffs, hair gone to gray, that stare finally blinking. The gavel fell guilty on enough counts to matter. People cheered. A lady I'd never met hugged me and cried into my shirt. Reporters stuck mics in my face. I didn't say much. There's not a speech in the world that fills an empty chair at your dinner table. Sabrina didn't come back right away. She calls. She lets me talk to Lila about spelling tests and a kitten her aunt's trying to pretend she'll keep. When we meet at the park, Lila runs full speed, and for a minute I remember I'm a father to someone breathing. Then she lets go and runs back to the swings, and Sabrina stands at a distance and says soft, "You did what you had to do, Caleb, but I don't know what we are anymore." I nod. Because love and justice don't always move in rhythm, and that's a beat you feel in your bones. I visit Noah's grave more than I should. I tell him we got the man who thought a badge came with a free pass to heaven. I tell him people know the names now his and a dozen other kids who never got to be loud grown-ups. The wind answers like wind does. On the long walk back to the truck, I pass storefronts boarded from last summer's protests and others with new paint and a help wanted sign. Lake Haven is the same and not. Maybe that's what change looks like up close, messy, uneven, annoying to anyone who likes clean endings. Was it worth it? Depends who you ask. Some folks call me a hero, others think I set the town on fire. I don't see either when I brush my teeth. I see a tired man who carried a torch until it burned his hands and then passed it to somebody else because the road is longer than any one person's stride. If you've watched this far, I want to know something. What's your line? The one between staying safe and standing up. Did I do right by not pulling that trigger? Do you think order means anything if it's built on fear? Drop your city in the comments. Tell me what you've seen, where you live, what you've kept quiet about, and what you can't anymore. If you believe the truth has to outlive the people who try to bury it, share this story. And if you don't, well, tell me why. I'll be in the replies listening.